I'll just preface this. It's just a pleasure to introduce Hans. She is a friend that I have had since 1964, and it goes back to Middleville. And when we all were living in Middleville, and Hans said that she's lived in Berry County actually since '63. We became friends in '64 and have been friends ever since. Not buddy friends, but she's just someone, and I think we keep track of each other and really appreciate each other. Maybe I feel that from her, and I'm sure she does from me. Okay. When Hans came over from the Netherlands, it was a few years after the war, and she and her husband had 3 children then. They had Roy, Manon, and don't tell me Hans, who is the male Hans. Roy is sitting over there. He's their oldest child. And then subsequently they had the final child, which was Nicole. She was born in the USA, right at St. Mary's, I believe, in Grand Rapids.
Yeah.
Okay.
On easy terms.
Whatever. Okay, so anyway, we have them moving to Middleville. The family moves to Middleville in '63. And all 3 children went to TK school and graduated from the school there. All are independent, self-sufficient young people with good careers. Roy, who lives in Hastings now, has worked in Kalamazoo all his life, one job, I think. And Manon, Hans feels, would be most well known by any people here. Manon had lived in Hastings for 12 years, and she said she actually was the first president of Kiwanis that was a female. So anyway, an interesting story. Then we go from there. Hans has returned to the Netherlands many times, one time with Beth Lepek. They traveled and saw some of the things that Beth was particularly interested in. Hans would be a good travel leader, you might say, because she's very knowledgeable about all those places. She lived there all her growing up years, of course, the years that you will learn about from the book, but she stayed enough that she really absorbed a lot of the culture and the history of the area, not only in the Netherlands, but in the other parts of Europe. Hans now likes to read a lot. She listens to classical music. She cooks old recipes that she likes, and she makes food ahead and freezes it for herself. She sews a little. She did some sewing almost professionally for people that would like some tailoring done. And then the last few years have been totally occupied, you might say, by writing this book, Obsessed.
Yeah.
Because there were times that we tried to get together, and Hans was right at a point in the book that she had to keep going. And it wasn't easy for Hans. I mean, she wasn't a professional stenographer or anything. She had to learn a lot about typing and computers. Totally, almost everything she knew, she learned after she started writing this book. And the book reminds me, just to say and bring her up to date to some extent, how challenged, not she isn't challenged, I won't put it that way, but how challenging it was to write this book. Anybody else, anybody I know would have thrown in the towel. The editors, after she found one, which was difficult, the editors just kept firing chapters back and sections back to her and saying that, to rewrite this and polish that and send $300 more for publicity. And it was just, to me, I just felt like it was unfair. But Hans took it in her usual way, that anytime she ever had some unhappy moments or sad moments, and because they're of that nature, I'm not going to go into what they were, you never got Hans down. She never stayed down. She always bounced back up. She always conquered it. I never saw her really in the dumps, you might say, like so many American women are. She was really a positive spirit all these years. Some of the interesting parts of her life since she, had come here was that she, all of her brothers, both brothers and a sister, also came over and have immigrated over here and become citizens in Texas and in Grand Rapids and in the northern woods. So she did have that kind of family with her, but her mother and dad never immigrated here, but they did visit. And I was checking with her when she became a citizen, because Hans did become an American citizen. And we're trying to establish that date, and it was 2007, and she said one reason she had to wait that long is that her mother would have been so hurt to think that Hans became a citizen here and, gave up her Netherlands in some way or other. So she did do that. And I would just say that the book was marvelous to read, and she said her biggest motivating factor was to leave a memoir for her children on what it was like to grow up in Europe in, those war years. And I identified with that so much because I was certainly old enough to remember all those years. And I would say it's a really good read. Once you get going in it, it just grips you. And my husband, who would have been here right now too, to have the happy experience of her talking about her book instead of writing it. He just said, tell him how much I liked the book too and enjoyed the book. In fact, I said, I'll tell him how you were kind of gripped into reading it and reading it and reading it. And you shut it and you said, Mary, that was really good. And I said, well, I thought it was too. Yeah, it was really good. And he said, in fact, I'm going to call her up right now and tell her. And he did. And he called up, and I heard him say, Hans, that was really a good story that you wrote. So
You have to hear that. Jack Brown, that is different.
yeah, so anyway, that is Hans, and I just hope you'll enjoy and that she will radiate that kind of spirit that she really is, and I think comes through in the book. And with no further ado, here she is, Hans van Kuilenburg.
If I can get these big I'm not used to microphones. So my parents got married in 1929, and before long they had 4 children, every 2 years one, and I'm the oldest of the group. Well, when you're the oldest, you get responsibilities. You take care of the other ones, and that is exactly what I did. So now I will look at my notes so that I don't bore you to death. My father was a clerk at a lawyer's office across the canal where Mr. Frank, Otto Frank, had his business. And then boat came, like everybody in Holland, bicycles. So my father parks his bike, Otto Frank across parks his bike. They say, hey, just like a neighbor, that sort of thing. Other than that, I never met the Franks, nor did I meet, I can't think of the girl's name now. Oh, Anne. Anyway, so that was that. However, the lawyer's office didn't pay a lot of money, and my father had a chance to, because of my grandfather worked for the Dutch army as a civilian. He heard of an opening at the Dutch Marines for a civilian. My father got the job. So both of my My father and my grandfather were working for the state. And that was great, because it was steady and good. My father became the supervisor of marine supplies. When the war started, he remained in that position. And that was great, because he could then steal, and I hate to say that, I had a hard time with that. He could pilfer supplies and give them to people that were hiding, or give them to a man who then took care of them. Anyway, that is part of it. Since I am the eldest of 4 children, I had the typical first child chores. Did not always like that responsibility. Life was smooth, and I played with dolls, read a lot, which I still do, and took French classes. Had my first boyfriend in 4th grade. On the morning of, in addition, I had ballet lessons. Later, I was a member of a youth theater group which remained in session until 1944. On the morning of May 10th, my parents had the radio on, which was unusual because my mother never had the radio on when we would go to school. So my sister and I knew that there was something going on, though we did not know exactly what. Well, we heard that German paratroopers had landed at Schiphol, our biggest airport. Well, you know, war. What is war? We had heard about that, but you don't know. I was 10 years old. We had the day off from school. That was great. You're not going to complain about those things. However, that was the first day. The second day was not that much fun anymore. We heard that the Germans had bombed Rotterdam, one of our biggest cargo ship companies, was going up in flames, as were the houses and the people. My aunt, who had a lot of family in Rotterdam, I heard her say to my mother, the arms and legs are hanging in the trees from the people. That was a little hard to swallow. The third day, the Queen, and that was really silly, the Queen sent a protest statement to Hitler. Now that I thought was a little naive. Did she really think he was going to stop the war because she had a protest? No, that was not going to happen. So, but meanwhile, in that time, the third day, they were leaving the country. She and all the top ministers, not clergy, but we call them ministers, were fleeing to England. King Leopold from Belgium remained with his people. He was virtually a prisoner in his own palace, but he did not want to leave his people. Don't know how good that kind of move was. Nobody really does, but I respected him for that, and not the Queen who took off. Our princess, with her 3 children at the time, moved to Canada because that was considered safe. So she was gone, and so we heard that the Germans had threatened to bomb Utrecht, which was in the middle of our country. That did not happen because we were already negotiating for a truce. Well, one of my cousins sat in a tree with a rifle out of the 1800s, trying to hold up one of those Tiger tanks. Well, obviously that wasn't going anywhere. So the Queen, or the whole upper echelon, had thought that we would remain neutral like in the First World War. We did not. So we lasted 5 days, and I will never, ever forget the sound of their boots when they were running, or not running, the parade steps through our street. We lived in a thoroughfare where everybody always came through. Never will I forget that, nor the proud faces of them that had conquered us. Resistance started almost immediately. Nobody likes other people to occupy your country. Hitler had thought that he could annex us, that we would just roll over and say, die, take us. We did not. And I'm very proud of my fellow countrymen that they did not. Jewish people lived all around us. There was no ghetto in Amsterdam. Next door to us lived a ballerina with her husband, who was a musician. He was Jewish. Across the street from us was a large store, clothing store, owned by Jewish people. Next to that was a bake shop owned by 2 Jewish ladies. So they lived all around us. We made no difference whether they were Jews or what they were, or purple or whatever. They were just part of Amsterdam. You know, you didn't really make a difference with that. I will have a swallow of water because my throat is getting dry. Anyway, after 5 days, we gave up. And like I said, resistance started almost immediately. Holland still does, a lot of political parties. We have, and I do believe we still have, of course, there's so many. The Catholics have their own party, the Christian Reformed have their own party, and so on and so forth. Not necessary, but that's the way it is, and that's the way it always has been. But there was also a Nazi party, because people that were poor and frequently younger ones liked what Hitler was doing. It was that way in Austria as well. He took Austria in 1938, and 80% of the population welcomed him with open arms. So he had really thought that we, the Dutch, would say, yes, please come. Well, we did not. So they made propaganda movies of the blonde, always the blonde, blue-eyed little kids sitting next to a German officer and being so happy that they made a canal tour, etc., etc. Anyway, he was born on the wrong day too. Oh, terrible thing. And I have to tell you this, that it has something to do with it as well. But May the 5th is the day that in Holland we celebrate that we were free. May the 4th is the day that we mourn all the people that died during the war. And guess what? May the 4th. And my husband said, you can't do that. And I thought, I can't wait any longer. And that's May the 4th, he saw the light. And what a delight he has been. Anyway, we're sitting there in the middle of the war, and it gets worse and worse every day. Food was becoming scarce. Hermann Göring They call him the fat one, because he was 300 and some pounds. Herman then said, I don't care what happens, we, the German people, get their food. So they shipped everything to Germany. In 1943, it got so bad that tuberculosis was rampant in Holland. And the doctors went on strike. All of our doctors went on strike. Well, the top echelon of the Nazi party in Holland said, okay, you guys on strike, I will arrest all of you. So all of our doctors ended up in prison. However, after a couple of days, he let them go because he realized that that could not be, a country without doctors. So that was the first thing. Another thing that happened in February of 1942, all of our tram conductors went on strike, originated by some guys who later were executed, as a protest statement for the Jewish people. We thought that might help, I guess, but of course it didn't do anything. And so there were 40 men that were the leaders of this. They were all executed. I went to a Christian school. The principal of my school prayed every day in class that that God needed to destroy the enemy. And we had children in school that were in the Hitler Jugend. And that they left the man alone is beyond comprehension, because nobody ever did anything to him. However, in the 40 men that were executed, the principal's son, oldest son, was also in that group and executed, which we didn't know because he didn't speak about it, but we found out later. So then, food is getting pretty scarce. People are getting sick. My father brought home a lot of the canned goods that he could pilfer, and we survived. We ate. Our neighbors ate. I cannot tell you how many times my mother sent me down the stairs, because we lived on the 3rd floor, that was cheaper. We had to climb all those steps. We couldn't do that anymore now. But anyway, she sent me downstairs and to bring food to the neighbors, the 1st floor and the 2nd floor. So he kept a lot of people alive. My grandparents would drop in at about 5 and to see if there was anything to eat. And there was an uncle with his youngest child who was younger than I was. He too came always to see if there was anything to eat. Well, if you're hungry enough, you do most anything. In 1942, we hear about America in the war. My parents were overjoyed, because now they thought things are going to change. Things are going to take a turn, because, they're mighty. America was mighty. So, but it took an awful long time, and you didn't get any real news because everything was censored. All our newspapers. There was a newspaper in the south of the country that dared to write. Well, obviously it was closed. So, what we heard was my father had hid a radio above a cupboard, and we could he knew where to find the English broadcast. It was do-do-do-do, do-do-do-do, and it was later I learned that was Beethoven's 5th. the first part of Beethoven's Fifth. And there we heard the real news. We heard actually the real news. It was fantastic. And I was very interested in that. You know, the other kids were too young. One Sunday afternoon in February of 1943, my parents were not home, and we have an air raid. And again, they missed they wanted to bomb the SS headquarters. Well, they were far off. I put the children and the others with the ration cards in the stairway, and I went back in the living room to see what was going on. And there came the bombs flying past. They didn't hit us, but they hit others. So frequently it was that they missed their target. And that was always scary because you never knew. My mother put a big quilt in front of the glass doors that we had. We had glass doors and then a balcony. She hung a quilt there in case that we would be bombed or shot at for flying, that flying glass would not hit us. Food, well, we still had food. In 1944, my sister, who was then 12, took her little bicycle, and my mother gave her some sheets along and some red handkerchiefs, and my sister pedaled her bike to the farmers and came back with a pail full of milk. We hadn't seen milk in, I cannot tell you how long. But my little sister came back with milk, and that was good. I never did that, but I chopped for firewood. Oh, such a shame. My grandfather also was a furniture maker, and he had carved these beautiful chairs, but there was no firewood. So it was my task to chop the chairs up. And, well, you have to do what you have to do, but it was war. And I learned what it is to have a war. And in 1944, we heard rumors that the English or the Brits or the Canadians or the Americans were in the south of the country. Well, they were. But instead of coming north, where I was, they went east to Germany, and we were abandoned, and that was the hardest part of the war. The only thing we had was water. There was no coal, there was no heat, there was no light, there was no food. Our rations were now 400 calories a day. 30,000 people died of hunger. That's unbelievable. In Holland, the country of milk and butter, cheese, milk and butter. So the need was so great that my aunt went to the park and cut grass, and that is what she chewed on. We were trying to keep the rumbling from her stomach, you know. My father could no longer provide for us because there was nothing left, even in the warehouses. So it was unbelievable. At the very, very end, my mother also, you know what a colander is, right? A little thing with holes in it. My mother had, the only thing we had left was a colander full with potatoes. That was it. There was nothing else. My mother paid $40, might as well say, for a loaf of bread. And when she cut it open, the maggots crawled right out of it. What was in the, I have no idea. But it was very dire. We all managed to survive. I would never have made it otherwise. I was 12 years old at 5'8" and 85 pounds. So there was nothing to eat. There was nothing in the stores. It was all shipped to Germany. Shoes. We got one pair of shoes a year, a coupon for one pair of shoes a year. I have horrible feet, very long and narrow. No Dutch feet at all. It must have been a forebearer that had this. Maybe it came from France or God knows where. But anyway, I have my ration coupon and my father goes with me to buy a pair of shoes. Well, after much searching, we found a pair of shoes that fit, and it had a tie. I remember it distinctly. Well, that was on Saturday morning. On Monday morning, I go to school, and my shoes fell apart. It was pressed cardboard or something. Oh. And I had no shoes for the rest of the year. So my father stole a pair of shoes, and I walked around in men's shoes that were a mile too wide, of course, but at least it kept my feet dry. You know, it is really, when you think about it, it's unbelievable. It truly is. That so many things can happen. Oh, I also saw how forced enlistment works. I am standing there. I was going to visit an aunt and an uncle and my cousins. I'm standing waiting for the streetcar. This was in 43. And the big truck comes and all the German soldiers jump out like they always did. And it is about the hour that people come from their work and everybody is on a bicycle. They rounded up all the men. And God, if they ever came back, nobody knows. In the south of the country, close to the German border, we heard that they would kick in the door at night and take the men out of their bed, or haul the men out of their bed, and they also disappeared. So many that we don't know whatever happened to them, because they had no people left to work in their factories. So, but the factories were bombed because the English and the Americans bombed all the factories which they needed to do. They didn't know there were Dutch people that had been hauled out of their beds. So it was a horrific time. Absolutely undescribable. I think I'm done now, because I could talk here for hours and hours. I will take a break a minute, and if you want to hear more, then I will rattle it off. Okay? I shall have me a glass of water.
Can you tell us about what it was like when the soldiers finally came into your village?
Yes. I'm from Amsterdam, so that's a very big town. We were freed by the Canadians. It was nothing but Canadians, and I was too young. I remember we heard, they are here, they are there, you know, and I remember walking for miles out of town, and nobody came, and that is when they went into Germany. So that was Crazy Tuesday, they call it now. Anyway, then finally when we were freed by the Canadians. I learned to jitterbug with Canadian soldiers, and I was so light, so they threw me everywhere. 85 pounds, but it was not a lot. Anyway, that a lot of our girls that were older than I was 15, but that was a kid, you know, still. But a lot of our girls married Canadian soldiers. The 18-year-olds, the 19-year-olds. And they were city girls. And frequently, they ended up in Canada, way in the outback somewhere. So you don't know. First of all, they left their family. They didn't speak the language because we could not learn English during the war. German, they were trying to force us to learn German. And I spoke it fluently, but I have forgotten all about it now. But anyway, the Canadians were the ones that freed us, and there was a saying in Amsterdam, each our own Canadian. So that's what the girls did. Americans, I did not see a lot of. Canadians, yes, and English, yes. Yeah.
How long after the war did it take for food production to get back to some kind of normalcy?
That took a while. That took a while. What happened during what is called the Hunger Winter, it was a conglomeration of things that happened. The Germans had flooded all the farms, so there was no food coming. So I would say probably 46 before, and then my uncle was in Buchenwald and managed to survive, which in itself is a miracle. They threw him, he was supposed to make rabbit cages. And he stood at a scaffold, and one of the guards, don't know why, threw him off the scaffold. My uncle lay there, and they were going to let him lay there until he died. But there were people in the sick barracks, and the Germans were very, very afraid of catching whatever, you know. They had said there was smallpox and heavens knows what else. People from the sick barracks hauled my uncle in the barracks. And they said his leg was totally misformed. It's broken in numerous places. And that is a carpenter who was also in the sick barracks, there was no doctor, set his leg on whatever they had, you know. So my uncle then finally, when he thought the Germans had left, he and a Russian man went to where the commandature was, and they had fled. And my uncle remained at the camp, that was in April. He remained at the camp to keep it all peaceful and so forth until August. Then as he was walking home, because he walked all the way from Buchenwald home, he found a truck. And then when he had the truck, because everything was topsy-turvy of course, when he had the truck, it was a food transport. He was a driver. Not everybody could, in 1945, not everybody had a driver's license. He was a driver professional. He got a truck, he brought food in. All the other trucks, the food disappeared. It went to the black market. Because even though people were starving in Amsterdam, money talks. So I would say 46 is a good guess. Anybody else wants to know anything? I'm willing. Yeah.
I actually think I could listen to every story you could tell for the rest of the night. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, there's so much it tumbles out of my head, you know.
Were any of the people able to keep animals or pets during the war?
Oh, you mean, did they eat animals?
Well, I certainly know that happened, but was anybody able to actually keep their pets going through the war?
I don't know. I really don't know. Holland is a country where everybody has a dog just about, and you fall all over the droppings. if you wish. That is a little better now, but whether people actually ate their animals, I would not be surprised. I would not be surprised. My cousin Carl, who was 10 years older or so than I was, of course, a young man, he had to hide. And was hiding, he was in the underground, he was hiding with another man at a young farmer, who had a 6-year-old son. Somebody told the Germans that there were people there that were hiding. So they came and they set my cousin against the wall, also the farmer and his wife and the child and the other man. And the farmer bribed them. These were Dutch Nazis. The farmer bribed them with butter and cheese, and everybody stayed alive. So the farmers did so much. They really, truly did. They hid, because they had an opportunity to do it. They had haystacks and, all of that, and outbuildings. They hid a lot of people. And if the planes got shot down and the occupants of the plane bailed out, the farmers, frequently the farmers found them and hid them. And then managed to lead them to Belgium. And from Belgium they managed to get away. So they did. I give full credit to our farmers. I really do.
Well, they also took young children from families to the farms so they could eat there, because there's big Catholic families
Exactly. My
that
cousin
didn't
did.
have
Yeah.
enough to eat, so
Yeah.
they would go
My
over there.
cousin Amsterdam has a lot of suburbs. My cousin, the one that I was going to visit when I saw those men being picked up, she went to Friesland and stayed at a farm to eat. My husband, who at that point I did not know, stayed at a baker's who worked the tar out of the boy, but he survived.
He got to eat.
Yeah, he survived.
And I do remember what you're talking about, the men, taking the men out, any time during the night or whatever.
Yeah.
The trucks would come. I don't remember it myself, but I heard my brothers
Yeah.
and my dad
Yeah.
and my mom saying it. They would haul the guys out because they had taken to Germany to work
Yeah.
in the factories.
Exactly,
Mhm.
exactly. Can you imagine being hauled out of your bed in the middle of the night and then shipped to another country?
My girlfriend's father, two of my girlfriend's fathers had been taken to Germany to work in the factories, and they both came home.
Lucky,
Yeah,
lucky.
but they were never the same. They
No,
they
no.
divorced their wives, and they were just not. They couldn't stay home. They said it was so much of it happened to them, they could not stay.
I know.
They didn't want a family anymore.
No. As I wrote this, what I never, ever, we were so happy when when we heard the planes going over to bomb Germany. And then we said, let him have it. I remember my father saying, let him have it. I never thought of the children.
Yeah.
The children that did not ask for that, but they lived there. And what I would have liked to do, but can't because nobody wants to talk to me, I wanted to do a book on the German children of that time. And nobody, it's so painful for them that they don't want to talk.
But you also talked about the Hitler youth camp, I think it's called.
Yeah.
The Hitler, the children that went to the Hitler regime type thing.
Yeah,
They were the ones that were picked were very, smart kids, and they were very. That was an honor to serve there.
yeah, absolutely so.
Because they didn't really know what was all. I'm sure that's Because, and even in Holland, if they did it in Holland, that was something that was very important. They were very important people if they did that.
Oh, absolutely. And Hitler also had this idea, he liked the Dutch
Mm-hmm.
at first, because he thought he could just annex us. But because we had I did not fit in, but we had so many blonde and blue-eyed people, and he thought he loved blonde and blue-eyed. And we wanted all these maidens with
The braids.
the braids over their head and so forth. He actually had breeders.
Yeah, I know
He
he did,
had
yeah.
breeders.
Yeah.
They got extra rations, they got extra money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was an honor too.
That was an honor. Oh
Yeah.
my.
Everything he did, you know, what he made the people do, they thought it was fortunate for
Oh,
them to be picked.
absolutely,
Mhm.
yeah. It's unbelievable. Guess you didn't know that, did you? All those things. Oh, can you imagine? But I didn't fit in, my hair was auburn. But my sister was blonde. Well, she was too young. And my brother was blonde. He doesn't fit in. He gets gray, yeah. It's getting there, honey.
Well, he also did away with all the retarded people.
Oh, that's another thing.
Mhm.
Yeah. There were no retarded people in Germany. It's literally undescribable
Mhm.
how you can do things like that. Yeah.
Are there events or remembrances that continue on in Netherlands? Are they carrying on and
I
remembering
cannot
history?
quite understand you.
Are they continuing the history and having days of remembrance?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And the children are being taught?
Yes, they better. They better. This is something so unbelievably horrific. If we shall not forget.
What happened to the people who cooperated with the Germans after the war?
Well, they were not liked very well. And that spooked me for years. The war was over, and my girlfriend and I were going downtown, you know, young, at the time we were 16 and so or so. Well, you're going downtown, you know, up and down the street and so forth. Look at me, look at me. But all of a sudden, in front of the palace, there was this pedestal, or if you wish, and when I came closer, there was a woman, a young woman, and she was being tarred and feathered. I never forgot that, never.
She was being
That was so,
Tarred and
and
feathered.
she must have been
Explain it, maybe.
very bad. You know, I've seen others that their head was shaved and all that, but the tarred and feathered and her head was shaved first. Oh, it was a terrible sight. Another thing you don't forget.
I don't remember if I seen it or if I just heard about it, because sometimes you hear so much. My brothers know a lot about it, and so did my mom and dad.
Yeah.
So we always told stories about it, and I remember a woman in our street, they put her on a chair, and they shaved her head,
Yeah.
and they put a swastika on her head,
Oh, yeah.
because she was going with the Germans.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There were, I have seen several that way, but the one with the tar,
Yeah, that's-
hot tar and feathers, that's
That's
spooky.
really weird, yeah.
Yeah, I cannot handle that.
Hot
Her
tar,
head.
hot tar.
Is it on their head only, or just all over?
Well, they poured it
And on
over
her- Yeah, okay.
Hot tar.
Whoa,
hot tar, yeah. That,
you'd never
like
be
I
the same
said,
after
it
that.
spooked me for years. I could not handle that. It's one of those things.
But women did, their men were mostly in Germany, so the women were alone with their kids.
Yeah,
So they would do whatever they could to have some food or
Right.
whatever.
that too.
Yeah, and that's how that happens, because
Yeah, that too, but
Mhm.
you know, I didn't really, yeah. the food was
There was no
not,
food.
there was none. And we ate tulip bulbs. We ate sugar beets,
Yep.
that sort of thing.
I remember my brother telling us that when we had dinner, I was just a baby, and that he would say that Papa has more potatoes than I have. You know, because my
Really?
dad had more, he had maybe 2 potatoes or whatever, and he only had maybe 1 or a half. You know, so he looked at his plate and says, Papa has more potatoes than I have. You know, so he would give him another potato.
Oh, I see. Well, you know, my mother didn't do that. You know, the fathers always had more.
That's what I mean.
Yeah,
My father had more potatoes than my
Yeah.
brother did,
you sure?
because he had to go to work. My
Yeah.
brother was young.
The fathers were always taking care of it.
And I was the only one working.
Yeah, well, my mother at the time, and after the war, my mother was one of the few women in Holland that had started to work. Because we had so depleted everything, you know, to trade, we traded for food
Yeah.
and milk and whatever. So
What was her job? What was your mother's job?
my mother could sew, and so she became a chef at, what would you call it? Atelier, the bar they
Yeah,
made
atelier.
clothes. Yeah, so she was about, how old was she then? Mid-30s, I think. Well, it was terrible for my parents too, because they were young people. We had a curfew. We had to be in at 6 o'clock, or 8 o'clock, sorry, and until 6 in the morning, nobody outside, you know. And naughty kid as I was, I stayed at my girlfriend's until 8, and then I had to go from doorway to doorway to doorway trying to get home. But why kids do dumb things like that, it's beyond me.
I don't think kids realize the danger.
You're flawed to that, really.
Yeah.
And my mother would be mad, but I did it anyway.
Yes, we're scared.
You know how it goes. Oh, I should not say that. Other ears listening.
Yeah, too late now.
Yeah, it's true, it's true. He knew that. He knows these things from his mother. Shanti?
But I remember my parents telling me that during the war, I was born in 43, so there was no
Okay.
food anymore.
No, it was all bad, already bad.
Yeah, so the only thing that my mom could fix me was oatmeal. And I was too young to eat oatmeal. I threw it up all the time.
Oh dear.
So my father knew someone who worked in a factory where they made farina, you know, that.
Okay, yeah.
And so he would do some jobs for him, and then
I
he
see.
would bring him that, and that's what I ate, and I could keep that down.
That was good.
Mhm.
Me,
Yeah.
I remember my parents always, my parents are city people. And every summer, they would rent something in the country, you know, and there would be, we gleaned, grain that was laying in the fields, and the farmer had already bundled it. So we cleaned that, and then my mother had a coffee mill, and I had to put that through the coffee mill, and it was so ugly that I couldn't eat it. And because it also there was no sugar, so it had saccharin, and to this day, I cannot take the taste of that. So I went to school without anything to eat because I could not grab that stuff.
Yeah.
I was really, you know, you don't realize how difficult it is when you're 12 or 13 years old.
No, that would be hard.
That is hard.
Yeah.
So I didn't do it.
I'm curious about the emblem that is framed there.
Oh, yeah. That is a good thing, good question you asked. I knew that we had been in Germany, that the family had lived in Germany, but my family, because of religious reasons, moved from Germany in 1708 to Amsterdam. So really the background was German. And we were, the family were advisors to the king at the time. And that is the family crest. So I due to that, I was in Germany with a friend, and we went into a church because I said, Lippstadt, yeah, that is where my family lived at one time. So we are in Lippstadt, and the man is a musician, and he said, let's see if the church is open. Well, the door that I tried was not, but the door that he tried was. So we go inside the church, and he said to me, sit down, and I'll play for you, he said. So he is playing, but it is the glockenspiel. So at 7 o'clock at night, the bells are ringing, and we know that somebody is going to come and say, what's going on, you know. So my friend is German, and I'm just sitting there, and he said, stay, remain seated. So a man came, and he introduced himself as Herr Müller. Well, Herr Müller, my friend Narten said, this lady is a Moederzoon van Lippstadt. She is looking for family here. I wasn't. But, you know, he had to say something. And you're not going to believe this, but the man said, I worked for him for 40 years. This is a town of 72,000 people, and we meet somebody that has worked for my distant relative. So I said to my friend, I need to take some pictures. And I said, my camera is in the car. So he goes and he gets my camera, I take pictures. And we say goodbye to Herr Müller. The following morning, we are going castle shopping because I love castles. So he knows he's going to take me to castles. Puts his overcoat on, and in his pocket are the keys to the church. So, well, we know two names in Lippstadt, Müller and Moederzoon. Okay. So we ask an operator, or he asks an operator, not me because my German is terrible, but he asks an operator, and the operator says, Müller, no phone. Moederzoon, yes. He gets my very distant family on the telephone, and the man says, I have been looking for the Dutch Moederzoon for years. Please come back, and we go. It's 2.5 hour drive. We go back. We gave the good keys. We get to Lippstadt, and he had given his address, and we got there, and his wife said, Kopien. I didn't know what she meant. I thought, peeing. That's an entirely different meaning than I had. What she was saying is her husband was making a copy, but she kept saying kopien, so I didn't understand that. So the man comes back, and he brings with him the whole family tree to 1543. And the family crest. And and I really had a hard time because it feels to me like bragging. I deliberated putting that in the book. It took me weeks before I decided to do that. And due to that, I got an email through my publisher from a man in Wisconsin who has the same family crest. And that is why I say to people, please don't fight one another. We are all related somewhere. That is my message to people. Peace is what I believe in. Of course, we have to fight again now, but that, see, this is for to 1500. How many generations is that? It's unbelievable. Really, truly unbelievable. I have not met the family in Wisconsin yet, but he is coming. He's a policeman, and his brother is a sheriff, and his father was a policeman. So he is related to me somewhere, but amazing, amazing. That's what that is.
Thank you.
So now I think I have told you all I know. It was interesting enough. It was. I think. I was very nervous about this.
You did a
You're
nice
among
job.
friends.
Among friends.
We do have her book over here if anybody would be interested.
Yeah.
17